Go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session of the Lucid Deep Dives Roundtable discussions. Today, we have a super interesting topic and an amazing panel of knowledgeable lucid dreamers and dreamers, which is a difference which we're going to be discussing a lot today, because the topic is mindset and focus on lucid dreaming. What does this entail? I think that a pretty basic overview of it is that most of us here have quite a big focus on lucidity specifically within the community rather than dreams in general, in terms of end goals and in terms of discussion and in terms of techniques and etc. Today, and in the past, we've been discussing a lot on whether or not we should have this emphasis and what might be a better emphasis or mindset to have towards lucid dreaming in general. So I'm going to open this topic with the first point, which we have compiled of 5 points. How focusing solely on the end goal of lucidity often causes demotivation due to getting no enjoyment out of the process that it takes to get there, to get to your goals with lucidity. This is something that me and Vis and to some extent Cryo have been discussing in the past, and I will now open it. Stifle, you can take the lead.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. I hope you all having a good day. And to me, I see as like probably one of the bigger issues with lucidity and losing motivation. Of course, there's focusing on lucidity, but I think it's more focusing on results or a lack of results. In people, it's very easy to focus on just the end goal and not pay as much attention to the process of getting there, as well as to a lot of people going in kind of don't understand the skill aspect of lucidity and lucid dreaming training, and so they see these results, they see like this end goal, and then they get very frustrated because they're not getting there quickly. When instead of focusing on just the end goal, focus more on the process and not the actual end goal of getting there, because just focusing on that end goal can be pretty stressful. Set more reasonable expectations for yourself and, have those sort of short, medium, long-term goals as well. And so just focusing on getting lucid and the results aspect can be demotivating, especially if you're not getting quick results, which is pretty common for a lot of beginners.
Good point. Vis agrees.
Yeah.
Curious, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I completely
Right.
agree with that. In Atomic
ahead,
Habits, that's one of the things.
Wait, can you just... We're doing the hand raise thing, so
all right, yeah, okay, sorry.
Curious, you can go ahead.
I'll go ahead. All right. So in Atomic Habits, it talks about this, like focusing on like the end goal instead of the systems you're going to do to get to that goal. And that usually is like what separates unsuccessful people from successful people. So like focus on your way of getting there. And I would say if you're like really wanting to like get motivated, focus on like the content of your dreams and like get a lot of enjoyment out of them. Like start like saying to yourself that you enjoy them, and that's that.
I definitely agree that everything needs to be seen as a process. I think that the blatant focus on lucidity does cause demotivation because of the fact that people do have... I mean, like, we aren't going too much into this because this is essentially a negative assumption that someone is, like, essentially misinformed. But some people will believe that, techniques, you do them once and then you get lucid once or something like that. If you do mild one day, you're going to get a lucid dream instantly that night. Of course, even with that aside, which is definitely a bad mindset because it is a whole process, and even if you do accept that process, I think that your chances, if you aren't getting the results that you do want to see, even if you understand that they're going to come at some point, you might feel demotivation due to the effort that you're putting in or the results that you're getting out, regardless of how you see this process. And I think that the solution to this is understanding, really getting to know and understand your dreams for how they are and appreciate, rather than putting so much emphasis on lucidity, because dreams are part of the process, I think, is the key point here. Dreams are such an essential part, non-lucid dreams, and the very fundamental of lucid dreaming is dreams themselves. That if you learn to understand and appreciate and know and enjoy your non-lucid dreams, then that will make the whole process way easier. And right now, with the mindset that many people do have, is that they don't enjoy their non-lucid dreams, and this hinders people's ability to lucid dream a lot, I think, and to continue in that practice. Clara, you can go ahead.
I liked how you mentioned techniques there, as like people have this understanding that they'll do a technique and the technique will just like be the thing that skyrockets them in their like success with lucid dreaming. And it becomes so weird, like it's hard to really communicate because different people have different definitions of technique. Some people, when you say technique, they think of like all of our like acronym stuff or like really defined like things, and then other people, when you say techniques, they'll just think of anything that like works to get you more lucid dreams within the sphere of lucid dreaming. So this is like a little bit of a like aside, but it's sorry, I'm losing my wording. Actually, you can come back to me. Yeah.
Cool. No, you don't. That did make sense. Stifle.
Yeah, so yeah, kind of just feeding in off of a bit of what you said, this is just a good reason why defining our terms is really important, and why when I talk to someone on Discord or Reddit or anywhere like that, I never assume when someone says they're doing something by a term that that is my understanding of that term, and I always ask them how you're doing a thing or what exactly you're doing, and want details because of just like the common misconceptions, and just making sure we understand terms the same way, because that's the foundation of communication, is having that sort of shared understanding is really the essence of communication. But anyway, back to the whole kind of the mindset thing. Enjoying, dreams is important. I think one thing is like people often just use the one thing I don't really like is people just use the terms normal or regular just to refer to non-lucid dreams, and I always just use the terms lucid and non-lucid. I don't apply the normal slash regular to either lucid or non-lucid dreams. To me, they're both pretty normal, and to me, my chief reason for lucidity is enjoyment, and I enjoy a lot of my dreams. Non-lucid dreams and lucid dreams are a lot of fun. I enjoy them, but I definitely think that that's enjoying your own dreams is kind of important. I think just like the chief reason that people lose motivation for lucid dreaming is honestly just leaping before looking. I mean, you can account for the vast majority of drop off in people who quit lucid dreaming. Not all of them, but for probably 60 to 70% of them drop off initially because they're just not aware of what it actually takes, and they're misinformed, and they think it's just something that's going to happen to them instantly, and they lose motivation quickly because they're not actually prepared to practice or train a skill. And then you have some of the other people who drop off later because they actually had been practicing for a while and just haven't been getting results and get kind of demotivated that way. I think enjoying your dreams is definitely helpful. Anything that can reduce your stress, so not worrying about the results you're going to get, because stress is definitely a real killer and a real hindrance to getting success with lucid dreaming and with other things too. But yeah.
Perfect. So before we go to conclusions, everyone can start thinking of them. Cryo.
I'll keep this really quick because, like you said, we do want to go to conclusion soon. But it's important to think of with lucidity, a lot of people want to get lucid dreams so they can do interesting stuff in their dreams. But they don't care about their regular dreams, which is like it shows a mindset with that's like way overemphasizing lucidity, because lucid dreams are just dreams in which you know you are dreaming. Unless you are looking forward to the stuff that you want to do, like you're looking forward to like knowing you're dreaming while you're doing that stuff. Not regular, sorry, I know Skyfall just said that. Non-lucid dreams, it's just a habit to say that. Non-lucid dreams can have like equally as amazing experiences. You just don't know you're dreaming. So I think that's an important like perspective to have.
Good point. All right, now we can go around for some conclusions. Just to start off, and then I suppose I can go to V's next. I think that what we've gotten to so far on this topic is definitely just the idea that demotivation comes from very like different aspects and not necessarily just from an emphasis on lucidity, and an emphasis on lucidity isn't too much necessary. How one can apply this is also another question, which I'll go to V's, see what he has to say.
Do I move on to point 2 now?
No, well, do you have any conclusions for this one to share?
Conclusions. No, I don't have anything that hasn't already been said, but just generally focusing on the end goal of lucidity is what gets people demotivated a lot of the time. It's why a lot of people quit. That's all I have to say.
Does anyone else have conclusions to share? Stifle?
Of course I do. But yeah, I think, because there's a fine line. I don't think it's focusing on lucidity that's why the vast majority of people leave. I think it's really the not understanding the nature of it, the misinformation, but that's another topic altogether. I think you can still have a goal of lucid dreaming as long as you're not stressed over it. It's stressing over results and making that sort of the only thing you focus on, and rather instead of taking a more relaxed approach to it. Because I think having that kind of relaxed approach, not judging yourself for not getting lucid or making that sort of the only focus, but you can still have that as a goal if you're not stressing over it and if you're taking a more relaxed approach with it.
Cool. Cryo, or is that good for you?
I've got pretty much nothing to say that hasn't already been said. I mean, I have some stuff, but it's more relevant for later in the discussion.
All right, perfect. On to point 2. One can re-motivate themselves by creating intrinsic enjoyment out of practicing and remembering dreams, is sort of like the idea which is being presented. And a question is, how can we do this? How can we re-motivate ourselves, essentially? Does anyone want to start, or should I start? Go on, start.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Because there are a couple of things for this. Just like a lot of these, there's a good bit of subjectivity with dreams and dream enjoyment in general. So I think for the average person, something like this is pretty good idea. Trying to find a way to actually take enjoyment out of your dreams, find things that you like about your dreams. But now, what if you're someone who's dealing with a lot of negativity and negative emotions, for example, or a lot of nightmare scenarios or unresolved trauma or things like that? In some ways, there are people out there who one of the motivations for lucid dreaming is trying to resolve things like that, and so they're not getting a lot of enjoyment from non-lucid dreams, and it's not necessarily the easiest thing to fix. I think for the average person, finding ways to enjoy your non-lucid dreams can be good, but there's definitely people where that isn't going to be very applicable in terms of whether it's nightmares or like the kind of dreams that they have. And maybe one of their goals is actually trying to change the dreams they have and make them more interesting. And so that's also something to consider.
Interesting. Curious, go on.
I see this idea of intrinsic motivation so much in the self-help realm, and there's a particular idea when it comes to this idea of, well, intrinsic enjoyment in this case, as you've named it, or also this idea of tangible enjoyment, right? Because if I were to give an example of other skills that we sometimes learn, it could be like an instrument or something else. Some of those motivations come within the progress of doing that skill, but with lucid dreaming it might not be as clear. So while we do have that idea of an end goal, maybe you need to be creating some of those tangible features to continue through your practice yourself. So, I mean, I think it's going to differ a lot between people, but it's definitely going to be for the person who's practicing lucid dreaming themselves. So you can begin with adopting mindfulness or awareness, where the act of maybe recalling or exploring those dreams becomes the experience in itself. And of course, we always talk about journaling in this world, because if you're able to find some of these practical ways or more tangible ways to enhance that enjoyment, I would think you could track your progress over time, and that would keep you within something like that. Unlike a lot of the misinformation that we've seen with instantaneously working techniques, which doesn't exist really. So yeah, how else can we reinforce these exercises where they can help highlight some of that intrinsic reward of dream exploration?
Cool. What I've been noticing, I think, sort of going off of Stifle's point a bit, was that the idea that it's not so easy for some people to get this intrinsic enjoyment out of their dreams is a point which I hear all the time. I mean, me and some other people have quite often been like bringing this discussion up in public chats on Discord, and then it ends up that some person will mention, well, I would try to like my dreams, but I simply don't like my dreams. They're boring, or they're not interesting, or they're not fun. They could be nightmares, or this or that. I think that in addition to using the word getting enjoyment out of one's dreams, one can also say learning to understand their dreams and appreciate their dreams for telling them something about themselves, or for providing insight. And because dream work is a massive field which does not specifically go to lucid dreaming. Lucid dreaming is simply something that one can do in their dream, because it's literally the act of knowing that you're dreaming while you're dreaming. And dream work includes dream interpretation, understanding dreams, as well as incubating dreams, and so much more. I think that understanding one's dreams is definitely something which we should be putting way more emphasis on when we are teaching other people and talking about it, because when one loses that emphasis and loses the understanding of their dreams, it not only actually, I believe, hinders their ability to become lucid, I think, because, for example, in the mild practice, part of the practice, the idea of it is to get to know your dreams. And then when you get to know your dreams as you go through them and such, by creating this association between what happened and it being a dream, that's what causes you to recognize that you're dreaming next time that you're dreaming, right? So that's like an example of how lucid dreaming does work. So if you don't have that appreciation for your dreams, the understanding of your dreams, which can benefit you very significantly in waking state if you're able to delve into your own psychology and such, that's like a bit of a different topic, but a lot of dream work is very connected to that. Then I think that it can hinder your ability to become lucid, hinder your ability to do any sort of dream work, because dream work is essentially dream work. It's around dreams and not about lucidity, and it's not even about techniques. It's about dreams at the end of the day. And I think we sometimes forget that it's not so that what we're doing isn't techniques. What we're doing is a dream practice, which has techniques to do specific things, but that's not the main focus. I think I rambled a bit. Karya, you can go on.
All right, so kind of going back to what Skyfall said, but also talking more about what Crystal said, is you said like as for people who have unpleasant dreams, like either traumatic or like nightmares, and rather than trying to explore their dreams with lucidity, they want to escape it, which is like a very valid point if you have those like terrible dreams. But I would say you don't necessarily have to have an enjoyment in your dreams to have that like what's the word, like interest. I would say like Crystal said, understanding also works in that sense. And another thing Crystal said is also some people just have boring dreams, which is something I also wanted to talk about in this segment. Is a lot of people think their dreams are just like really boring, like, and I don't blame them, because for a lot of people, their dreams are just a random smattering of like plots and ideas that don't really make any sense. They don't apply in any sense to their like waking life. So they just kind of like, it's hard for them to find interest. And something that I would recommend is like connecting your dreams, like trying to see which ones are like similar, which ones are like, that seems to work for a lot of people. I don't know how, like, I completely lost my wording. It seems to work for a lot of people, is just like trying to figure out how their dreams connect to each other, like trying to find different like persistent locations and areas in like even non-lucid dreams. And then when you go to the next night, there's an interest in what will happen, because it could reveal or engage with any part of that like intricate like world that you've set up with it. You can go to the next thing now.
All right, perfect. Yeah, that's cool to hear. Night Owl, you can go ahead. And it's nice to see you here.
Hey guys, sorry, my camera's backwards, I guess. But I just wanted to chime in with something you said, Crystal, that this is a dream work practice. It's not just about lucidity. It's not just about techniques, right? So the proper mindset is really to just enjoy your dreams. And I love what Skyfall mentioned earlier. He said something along the lines of, there's a difference between lucid and non-lucid dreams. And I use some terms. I like to say waking life versus the dream world, right? So for me, the perfect dream work practice involves augmenting and even enhancing your waking life experiences. And Curious mentioned mindfulness is a great feature of really good dream work practice, right? Being aware of your surroundings, aware of your mindset, right? What we're talking about today. But when it comes down to remembering your dreams, once you get to that place where you're recalling at least one dream a night, hopefully more than that, right? Start to really just enjoy your progress and enjoy the process, right? So for me personally, I love to analyze my dreams, and there's a ton of different approaches you can take to that. I don't recommend opening a dream dictionary and trying to find symbols and predefined terms that way. But if that's something that interests you, sure, it could be entertaining to say the least. But even when you attain lucidity, I find that some of the most interesting dreams are when you just take a back seat and play the role of conscious observer, right? So, for example, why am I dreaming of this certain thing? Or like, why do I keep having the same recurring dream theme that seems to consistently present itself? For me, it could present itself in the form of nightmares, right? So why do I keep having this negative emotion? And through practice, you can sort of uh, delineate these patterns and trends, and then in and of itself, those can serve as triggers to grant you lucidity. So really, it's in appreciating your dreams along the way. And what you'll find more often than not is that there is this connection between the waking world and the dream world, that you're not just dreaming of random things for absolutely no reason whatsoever. Now, some people might say they are random neurons firing without real reason, but that's not my personal belief. And it's still, up to us to decide what your own personal dreams mean. So by shifting your perspective and waking up to be more mindful of what you're experiencing, what you're thinking about, where your energy goes, the emotions you're having, you can start to make that connection to the dreams you're experiencing.
Great, thanks. Yeah, that definitely adds a lot to some of the points which we were making. So now, just quickly to go around with some conclusions that people may have. Stifle, I don't know if you want to add something new. You can, like, really quickly if you want, but if you want,
Yeah,
like,
I
also
think
as
I think like
conclusion.
the main thing Okay. Yeah, I'll add conclusions too, but I think like one of the main things to consider is like, there are broader dream work practices are appealing to a lot of people, and then there are people, myself, where lucidity is the kind of the main idea, the main thing we want to do, or we want to explore dreams in that particular way. And so I think it's there's a lot of variability at play. I think ultimately the question is going to comes down to, well, that's going to be later, but like, what ultimately do we teach people? Dream interpretation isn't really something that's my cup of tea or something that I'm really into on a personal level. So that's not really something I bother with. I do think enjoying dreams is important. And so it's ultimately, what do you find enjoyable? Do you find any enjoyment from anything in your dreams? It starts, whatever it is, it starts with remembering them. If you're not remembering your dreams, obviously that's the first thing that anyone has to do in any way to enjoy their dreams, really, is to be able to remember them. And so that's square one, really.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Good point. Does anyone want to add things for conclusions? Everyone's talked this time, so everyone can add something. Curious, do you want to say something?
As it comes to the idea of, hey, how can you integrate yourself into this practice? I really think that, I mean, as Skyfall himself said, maybe dream interpretation might not be his thing, but it could be something for everybody else. Or well, it doesn't have to be everybody else, but it could be something for other people in general, right? So I think everybody needs to find that one part of dreaming that they'd really like to integrate in or tap into, and eventually, as they find that, that will guide them on through the rest of their practice.
Cool. Cryo, do you want to conclude with something?
Yeah, it's like Curious Box said. Dream work is a really like vast and large topic that has a lot of different like things you can do within it, and it makes it like strange to talk about it because I think we all mainly come from the sphere of lucidity, and we all started with a focus on that. So to like branch out to all of the other stuff in dreamwork, which we have now realized is also important, and we may even like highly enjoy. It's an interesting thing, but like whatever part of dreaming that interests you most, or whatever parts I should say, because for a lot of people there's multiple things that they want to do and they can't do it once because you have so many dreams in the night. Whatever thing interests you most, that should be your goal to like not that should be your idea with dreaming.
That's perfect. I think that definitely will segue into the next topic. But first, Vise, what would you like to conclude with?
I'd like to clear up something. It doesn't contradict what anyone has said, but it's just something that should be said out loud. You don't have to get direct enjoyment from your dreams. You can get enjoyment from say like your nightly routine. That I think that's important to like clear up, because we don't mean that you have to get enjoyment from something that's directly inside of the dream.
Good point. Thanks. Great. Okay, this goes into the third topic, which we've already begun to touch on, which is that someone's goal might not even be lucid dreaming in the first place. It could be incubating non-lucids, stopping nightmares, or even just recalling dreams. Everyone's reason for getting into the subject is different, as Cryo was mentioning before. And I definitely agree that this does still relate to what we've been saying before, because essentially when we put so much emphasis on lucidity, it may potentially cut out all of these other potential interests or goals which other people may find. So Stifle, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I think there are we start branching into sort of different areas and different aspects. Like if you are teaching lucid dreaming, you're typically teaching people in a way who want to get lucid for some reason. They want to get involved with lucidity for some reason. I would say a lot of the things are pretty tangential. Like, there are a lot of people who will want to get lucid to combat nightmares, for example. Some people want to get lucid for lucid's sake. Other people want to get lucid because they want to learn to control their dreams. Other people want to get lucid because they want to enjoy their dreams more. I would say there are things like dream incubation is like non-lucid dream incubation is a bit of a separate topic in a sense that it's not really lucidity training that's involved there. It's a little bit different. So I wouldn't necessarily, I don't know if I'd fall it under the same umbrella as lucid dreaming, like broader dream work related stuff. Yeah, absolutely. But I think there's a bit of differentiation there as well. So I I think it's the question that a lot of people at LDI ask is, why are you getting into lucid dreaming? So what is your why for getting involved? Because ultimately that's at the core of any motivation, is you have a reason for doing something. What is your reason for doing it? You always have to start that with learning any skill whatsoever. You have to have a reason to do it, and that is ultimately the driving motivation behind it, whatever your reason is. So if you don't have a reason for doing something, or a good reason, or a reason you really care about, then you're not going to get very far in really just about anything you do.
Yeah, I agree. To add some of my own points, I think that one interesting example, just to sort of give an example of people having other interests rather than just lucidity, I think that when you look at a lot of and I'm sorry for bringing this up, and it is just an example, I don't even want to start talking about it. Like all of the reality shifting and astral projection communities, essentially what they're getting is a non-lucid dream incubated, right? So, that kind of goes to prove that it's possible to do that. And it would only be better if they knew that it was a dream, essentially. So I think that there's just so much potential with this incubation practice and methods and this and that, where it's not so necessary to put emphasis on lucidity for results, and it's not something which everyone wants to do. And I often find it quite surprising that so few people in those communities even really know what lucid dreaming is, which is just kind of sad to me, because honestly, it's it's just knowledge which should be out there, especially for people who, even if they refuse to believe that what they're doing is dreaming in one way or another, I think that one can still be interested in the topic of dreams, right? So that's just what I wanted to put out there, that there are quite a lot of techniques and successes and this and that in incubation itself. Curious, you can go on.
I would want to think that, all of us here, as we're speaking right now, we are most definitely lucid dreamers, but within the rest of the different types of dream work that they are, I think they're just like different branches of science. Like, they're all, well, it could be one form of analogy, but there are so many ways to divide up something like this. And I've particularly seen some things, we can go all the way back to culture. We actually had an event, a live stream on history and culture that I did a section on before. But apart from that, I'm just trying to think how some other ways that people might seek to incubate those non-lucid dreams. And one of those things that I might bring up is health or mindset, or even nightmares is actually a very very typical one. So if we look at it from that perspective, maybe there's even more to it that we might not even know when we just consider lucid dreaming alone, because there are so many different ways to use this tool that is our dreams, this evolutionary tool that has lasted with us that is so long. And in that case, maybe we want to find a practice. Well, I know we here are all lucid dreamers, but we should still be open to some of those other practices, that rather than following that kind of one size fits all approach.
Yeah, perfect. That does make sense. Cryo, you can go on.
All right. So once again, I have two things I wanted to say. The first thing I wanted to say was, Crystal had said earlier that, and I don't mean to like say that you're like wrong or anything, but I'd like to add on that Crystal said earlier that a lot of the experiences that, like, say, reality shifters or people who do like astral projection stuff could be like bettered by lucidity, which I think is definitely true in some aspects. But I think a lot of people, like outside of the like sphere of lucidity, as I said earlier, care about non-lucids more than they do about lucids. And it goes along the lines of something LeBurge said once. I'll keep it short, but like he had a dream that was basically around the topic of like death, but because it was non-lucid, there wasn't this idea of like, okay, but it's death, but I'm gonna like wake up soon. It was like fully facing the idea of death, and like it went somewhere beautiful with that, compared to a lucid dream, which could be like equally as enlightening, but can't have the exact same experience. So that's something that's important to keep in mind. And the other thing I wanted to say was, I think incubation is right now just generally in the world very like slept on, I would say, because the practice for it seems like it could be and probably is as deep and like involved as practice with lucidity or recall. But because it's something that doesn't have much like direct research into and not much like direct work into quite yet, we don't entirely know like all of the stuff that could make it as easy as possible for people to get into it. So that's important to keep in mind going forward, that I do think induction is like, or not induction, incubation is a like topic that needs more discussion in the future. That's all.
Cool. This go on. Oh, never mind. Don't worry. I think that we can probably jump to conclusions now. But what I want us to do for these conclusions is sort of, seeing as this is sort of talking about how everyone has their individual interests and this and that, I think that one thing which we should add to this as well is that the question, which can be like half conclusions, I don't know what you're saying, can be the question of how do we apply this to the process in which we guide people? Because at this stage, you know, we get tons of people, I think all of us have experience with teaching people stuff to do with lucid dreaming, and especially in the context of the deep dives and of the Lucid Dreaming Initiative, how do we make sure that the content that we produce and the methods in which we teach people doesn't cut out all of these alternative possibilities and create spaces for people to be interested in all of the other things and to know all of the other things that people can do with their dreams. And, you know, as well relating it to previous topics of how to have people go into this with a positive mindset rather than simply being so set specifically on lucidity and maybe forgetting about all of the other possibilities. Does anyone want to start with conclusions on that? Or with simply comments on that? Stifle, you can go.
Yeah, I think it ultimately comes down to what someone is interested in. For the most part, you know, I teach lucid dreaming in communities where people are actively seeking it out. That's something that they want to do. And so a lot of it is, you know, here's a certain thing, people are finding it or getting interested in it online, and they're actively seeking out trying to learn how to do it. And so, while I feel like there is definitely there's definitely a lot of individual interest that can be involved in all areas of dream work. I think there's enough diversity between different aspects that, and there's also different approaches to teaching it, that they're not necessarily uniform or like the same kind of practices typically. So I think there is some diversity there between what, you know, what different practices are out there, what people want to learn. And the question is, are you like seeking people out to teach them? Are they seeking you out? What is the person coming to you wanting to learn or wanting to know how to do? And what is their motivation and their reason behind it? I think as a lucid dreaming teacher, I think that's an important thing. What is someone coming to you to learn how to lucid dream for? Why are they here? What is their motivation? What is their goal? What do they want out of it?
Yeah, cool. That makes sense to me. Cryo, you can go ahead with any conclusions you have or comments.
Yeah, I agree a lot with what Skyfall said, but from a more practical like standpoint, talking about the communities right now, The main like online community with like lucid dreaming, or like dreaming in general, but I say lucid dreaming because I'm talking about Dream Cafe here, which seems to be the main online area. It's the most active, most big. A lot of the people, I would say most of the people coming in there are coming in from ELD, which already sets up that bad mindset of such an overemphasis on lucidity without the emphasis of dreaming itself. So that makes it a really that makes it kind of difficult to figure out where to go from there, because people are going to keep coming in. We can't necessarily stop them from getting that mindset before they get to Dream Cafe without, like, I don't know, getting like ELD to post a video about it, which probably or definitely isn't going to happen. And so I have two ideas for that. One is just to be more like upfront about it, which isn't the best solution, but I think it's important to like let beginners who are coming in from ELD know that like just you're gonna need a different mindset. So we talk a lot about like misinfo, obviously, because there is terrible misinfo there, but a lot of the like more subtle misinfo that people don't understand as well is that mindset being bad. That the mindset that ELD like spreads around, and so in the future we should probably like on that front start working on figuring out how to just let beginners know about that. And another thing would just be, and I think we talked about this earlier, and I don't have like that much to say about this, but I think at a certain point, a sort of like blank slate needs to be created, not to like move everything to, but just to create as a new source of people coming in. Because, you know, if people have an interest in lucid dreaming, like even the smallest bit, usually that's going to take them to channels like ELD and stuff, stuff that has already been set up and is already like big and bad. But if we could find a way to like funnel that elsewhere to something with a better mindset, better information, then that would be good. But that goes along with 0.5, I think, and it's also really complicated. So that's all.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think that personally, sort of like for me, I think that I think one step we can take is giving and making available way more resources on these alternative dream work ideas, essentially, because I mean, there are so many resources that we have out there being shared, being used to do with lucid dreaming. And there's not a lot. I mean, there are some things on incubation, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of stuff on incubation for lucid dreaming, which is a whole other topic, because that's kind of debated in the term as well. And there's a whole lot of stuff out there, you know, of techniques, but there isn't a lot, which is, for example, how to get to know your dreams, how to interpret your dreams. And I think that Vise has been doing a good job in like sort of getting the topic of mindset itself sort of out there and known, even in the Dream Cafe server, writing out that guide, which is there in the resources channel. So I don't know. I think that we can definitely sort of make things more available and talk about things more is one way to put it. But I think that there's a lot of stuff potentially that we can do with how we try to present things to people in the first place. Because as was mentioned before, a lot of us are here from YouTube, or more specifically ELD, and that's not a very good way to start, because I mean, we can go on and on about like his channel and this and that, but I think as well, if people were able to start from a direction of dream work and such, that should be pretty interesting too. Vis, you can go on a bit related to incubation if you want to. I don't know how much though, because that's not the topic of the discussion, but if it is relevant, go on.
I think there is enough resources to do stuff with incubation, because technically mild is just a form of incubation. I don't want to get too much into it, but if we just like read reform mild as an incubation technique that can also be used to incubate lucidity that could support more people rather than the ones just looking to get into lucid dreaming, but people who are looking to dream about anything at all.
Oh, cool. This definitely ties into the next topic, and I think that does make a lot of sense to me. So topic 4, which I'll have us go right into, our current communities hyperfixate on lucidity, which reinforces the aforementioned bad mindset. Well, the previous discussion which we've had about the mindset issues which can come up. The resources should be reformed to instead give people the tools they need to do whatever they wish with their dreams, rather than solely designing techniques with the purpose of attaining lucidity. I think that ties into what I said before as well. I accidentally jumped into that topic because it seems we've written this to flow a little too well. So I think that on the topic of what V says, yes, the idea of potentially reforming techniques that are essentially directed towards lucidity could be directed towards any form of dream work, which I think is a very interesting idea and could also tie into some of the techniques used by RSAP people, which I just thought I'd mention. Stifle, you can go on.
So yes, I'm going to push back a little bit on one of the things. Mild's not really like an incubation technique. It's, in fact, there's a common misconception about mild that the dream scenario that you're actually imagining is what you're going to dream about, or that you're going to re-enter a previous dream. That's a pretty common misconception. In that sense, it's not actually really an incubation method in that sense of the word. Whereas incubating, you're trying to actually dream about a specific thing. It's more of like a perspective memory training to help you recognize when something is off and notice that you're dreaming. But that point aside, again, I don't know if the problem is really the lucidity, quote unquote, mindset. Like, of course, the end goal and hyperfixating on it can be an issue. I think ultimately the stressing over lucidity, or in that case, like having lucidity as a goal or as a driving motivator in what you're doing isn't a problem. It's all about how you approach that. It's about, is that is that really something you're stressed out about? Are you stressed over getting those results, or is there something else at play? I think lucid dreaming for the sake of lucid dreaming and having a goal to be getting lucid isn't a bad thing if you approach it the right way. And I think that's where the split is, because people don't approach that the right way. And I do think things like dream incubation, I think dream interpretation is its own thing. I think that's actually kind of a separate thing. Um, and incubation is kind of its own thing too. Again, that's a different mindset. You're not looking to develop mindfulness and awareness. There's another thing you can talk about. Okay, well, what about waking life benefits? Okay, what about mindfulness and awareness during the day, being more present and involved in what you're doing? What about those types of things as well to consider in terms of a full-on like lucidity practice and being more mindful with your own life and your waking life as well? Because there are other benefits outside of dreaming that can apply to lucidity as well.
Interesting points. Curious, go on.
I'm definitely going to agree with Skyfall on the idea that approach is something that's particularly important here. Now, I guess within everything that we've been doing, we do have a little bit of hyperfixation on this idea of achieving lucidity. But does that mean that we should be diluting the goal with maybe some other parts? I feel like they could act well as supplements, but at the same time, I don't think it should detract away from what people come to our community for. And in that case, there are ways of adapting some of the techniques that we're familiar with into making them a little bit more versatile. Though at the same time, I wouldn't find that creating something completely new to completely diversify what we're doing would be useful. So I would wonder if there are ways to essentially split the different aims that people have, and use some of these, like mindfulness, as well as there's analysis or whatever else it may be to supplement our practice. So instead of, we don't want to draw away from that goal, but we want to find a way to supplement that goal.
Interesting. So I have a lot to add to what has just been gone over. I think that, so what Stifle was saying to some extent was that the focus on lucidity or having that as a main goal isn't the issue. I think that it essentially doesn't necessarily have to be the issue, but the vast majority of the time, when one does put such an emphasis on lucidity, it does end up being the case that one would leave other things behind. What else was I going to add to that point? I think that, so I think that the emphasis on lucidity is kind of bad when one doesn't realize that lucidity in itself, okay, this is this might just be me. I don't know where I'm going to go with this. I think I'm actually to some extent quoting what Cryer said in a different context before, which is that I would not actually enjoy getting lucid, let's say, once a day. Let's say I became nightly, but in the dream I was just like, oh, I'm lucid, and then nothing interesting happens, or I just sort of go along and like start walking around, but I'm not really having fun. And that's happened to me like a lot of the time. I would actually prefer to have one really amazing, really interesting non-lucid dream per week than have an unamazing, unsatisfying lucid dream per day even. You know, that might just be me, but for me, it's just the experience at the end of the day which counts. So I think that such a focus on lucidity really also does have an effect on the non-lucid dreams, because dreams, after all, are manipulated by ourselves. They are ourselves to some extent, to all extent. So I think that when one suddenly puts so much emphasis on something, and then when that thing doesn't happen, and then they get the mindset that that non-lucid dreams aren't interesting, or that they aren't the goal, or this and that, it can actually negate the interest, whether in reality or whether because of mindset of the non-lucid dreams which they get, like the quality, the events which happen, this, that. I think that's an interesting point. I'm not going to ramble too much about this. I think that what Curious said was kind of odd to me, because you did mention diluting the goal as a phrase. I think that the goal does not need to be diluted. I think that the goal can be anything, and even if the goal is lucidity, I think that, well, there can be multiple goals too, I think is a cool point to add. And the goal of lucidity in dreams, you know, I've already gone over just now what I do think of that idea. The goal of lucidity will require all of these other aspects as well, because recall is essentially about non-lucid dreams. So, you know, that kind of sets an alternative goal as well at the same time, because you want to be recalling non-lucid dreams to get lucid dreams. So I don't know if I misinterpreted that, but whatever. I think that what Stifle was saying about mild as well is interesting. I think that the important part is that, incubation or not, just boil it down to the principles. Mild is literally the mnemonic induction of lucid dreams, so mnemonics. And I think that even if we can't keep that name, obviously, because it contains the words lucid dreams, I think that we can definitely do something with the ideas behind the practice, and the practice itself, because that boils down to mnemonics. And I think that's quite an important thing for anything to do with dream work to take into account. I think that's about it. I sort of rambled, sorry about that. I put like 3 points down. Nighthall, you can go on.
All right, so I love the back and forth, and especially where we don't necessarily agree. I know there's so many different opinions, and this is such a subjective field that it's worth continuing the conversation. And I like how Crystal just said you can have multiple goals at once, right? But there's goals, and then there's desires, there's wants, needs, and priorities, right? So it's like, where does lucid dreaming fit into that spectrum of things that you wish to happen? And an important takeaway is you have to enjoy the process, right? Because so many people want to jump right in and say something. I hear this every day. Give me the easiest technique to get me lucid. And it's like, well, what are you doing already? Right. And so often I see Skyfall on Reddit asking questions, probing more like, well, how is your dream recall? What is your goal? Right. Why do you even want to become lucid? And those are all great starting points, because if your why isn't strong enough, then you won't be able to withstand all the hows that get you there. Um, and so one thing that I like to emphasize, and I haven't heard anybody else bring up, is sleep, right? We're talking about a dream work practice, but how is your sleep? Did you get over 7 hours of sleep? Are you sleeping at a consistent time? What's your bedroom environment like? Are you dealing with, messy laundry like I'm putting away now? Is it your sanctuary? How's the temperature? Are you having a heavy meal before bed? Are you consuming drugs or other substances that can affect your sleep and dreams? Are you eating, consuming caffeine late into the day? So many things that get overlooked and neglected because we're so eager to just jump to that lucid dream experience, which let's just be clear really quick. One experience is enough to change your entire life. So you don't necessarily have to have these omni lucid dreams that could be, you know, uh, low quality railed experience like some may say. But let's start with sleep. And that's a real life tangible benefit I think so many people overlook into the wee hours of the morning, past midnight on Discord, asking people, how do I lucid dream? Well, step one, get some good sleep. Set up a schedule that you can follow day in, day out, regardless of school, regardless of work. And let's just start there. That's my advice.
Yeah, good point, definitely. So unless oh right, Skyfall is next. I almost forgot.
All right. You call me? You call me?
Yes, I did.
Excellent. Yeah, my Alexa was going off. Anyway, so basically, to say something like a Supreme Court justice might, from your earlier statement, Krista, I'd say I concur in part and dissent in part. I think the part that I agree with is like being so focused on getting lucid that you like neglect any of your dream experiences is an issue, absolutely. But having a goal of lucidity that drives you to enjoy your dreams and to think more about your dreams, and that goal of lucidity as an end goal, as the reason for you doing these practices, as a driving force to get you to keep a better sleep schedule, like Night Owl and I were just talking about, to take more care of your dreams and to pay more attention to them, to be more mindful while awake, to have all these other benefits. There is you have the same almost kind of quote unquote mindset in a way, where the same, well, actually not really the same mindset, the same goal. You have the same end goal of getting lucid and having lucidity and achieving different dream controls, and you have your short, medium, long-term goals, which are good to have. And there is an unhealthy way of thinking about it, and there's a healthy way of thinking about it. Same goal, same idea, and two different approaches. And I think that's what the real debate is what is the best approach. And you don't have to incorporate all the other practices and things that we're talking about to have a healthy approach to lucidity. You can if you want to. Again, this is a very subjective, very personal thing that each individual person would have an inclination one way or the other, or whichever way they choose to go. But ultimately, the way you think about lucidity or the way you approach it, it does come down to sort of what your end goals are, what your personal motivation is, and are you approaching it from, kind of like a healthy mindset of a way where you're using it to enhance yourself instead of like as an escapism, for example, which is not a healthy motivation. And then I think the other thing is, again, I still think that stressing over results is the negative mindset. I don't think lucidity for its own sake is the negative mindset. I think stressing over results and that being the hyperfixation, like we talked about, I think that's the negative mindset. And that's where a lot of people fail, is because they stress over results or they beat themselves up over not getting lucid, and they ignore what is happening if they are having decent dreams or not. And it ultimately is a very individual thing that it ultimately comes down to. But yeah, having good, healthy sleep is an important part. Lucidity can be a powerful motivator if used in a healthy way. It can motivate you to get a consistent sleep schedule. It can motivate you to develop more mindful waking life experiences, to be more aware of what you're doing, to be less autopilot, to be more involved in your daily life. It can give you an appreciation for waking experience. It can give you an appreciation for dreams and enjoyment of lucid and non-lucid dreams. In a healthy way, having a motivation of getting lucid in the right way can lead to a lot of great things. It ultimately comes down to how you approach it. And you can have the same motivation and just approach it in a healthy way versus an unhealthy way. And it ultimately comes down to what each individual's purpose, goal is, and their sort of mindset behind it, which is the whole point of this discussion.
Good point, Stifle. I do agree with what you said. I think that what I said before, I didn't really want it to go against what you said. I just wanted to sort of add the point that I think what it boils down to in my case is that lucidity is not inherently a positive. In a dream, literally becoming lucid in a dream does not inherently mean rainbows and flying pigs and this and that and all of, it doesn't mean that you'll complete your dream goals. It doesn't mean that you'll have fun. It doesn't mean this. It doesn't mean that. It's not inherently anything at all. It's just, that you're dreaming while you're dreaming. And then what happens after that just depends on so many factors, right? Or what led up to that, etc. I have had many lucid dreams before, which haven't really lived up to my expectations because my expectations used to be quite off. And I will admit that is definitely, obviously, a mindset problem. And I think that the idea that just being in a dream and saying, oh, I'm dreaming, will result in positive things happening. It gives a chance for positive things to happen, but you could even just immediately wake up, just as an example of how it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to complete goals or have fun or this or that. So I think that that's part of the problem which I see with an overly strong emphasis on lucidity. But I think that an emphasis itself isn't necessarily inherently bad either. I do agree with Stifle. So we're sort of over time, and I will apologize for this. We do have one more point to get to, so unless anyone has, I'll give people a few seconds to say if they have any conclusions to make on this point, or else I'll go on to the fifth point, which is almost like a conclusion in itself as well, because it ties it to the community. I will take that as no one having any additional points. So, point 5 is what it takes to grow a lucid dreaming community. I think that, so a good side note below that is making it focused on dreaming as a whole and the interesting topics that it breeds is an idea. I think that what goes below this topic, which is something which I've been exploring a lot myself, is the question of, for example, if you look at the Discord communities, let's take Dream Cafe as an example because it's the biggest. I think that what you see there every single day, which anyone who goes in there for a couple of days will immediately notice, is that there's constantly a flow of people joining and people leaving, or people joining and people becoming active and then inactive. And one of the reasons which I identified for this was that lucidity itself doesn't appear to be a self-sustaining topic of discussion. I think that when you look in the chats of that server, and this is sort of just an example and it's applicable to many other spaces, you will see people talking about techniques and people talking about whether or not they got lucid. However, seeing as people aren't getting consistently lucid and techniques aren't evolving or changing or aren't too much of a sustainable topic either, these people will get bored of these topics and teaching beginners things related to these topics. And that's what could essentially make the community not so self-sustaining. I think that's what some of this boils down to. And then the question of what if we then, I know I'm rambling a bit, but like to present the topic, the stuff which mostly me and Vise have been talking about in the past, is that what if we made the topic of discussion more about dreams, because dreams are sustaining, because everyone dreams every night, and those dreams can be discussed, they can be interpreted, they can be etc., all of that stuff. So how could that be possible? Why isn't that possible? Why isn't that happening? I mean, and that sort of led into a lot of strange conclusions which I came to, and I don't know about others, so I will open the floor now. Does anyone specific want to start? Maybe. Okay, sure. Skyfall.
I'm about as shy as I don't know what a good comparison is. Probably like I'm about as shy as like the friendly dog, basically running up to people. Anyway, it's, dream interpretation, I think, is like I think discussing dreams, interpreting them kind of can be. You can start to get into some questionable territory in certain ways depending on how things go, because there's some really wonky stuff out there, such as people saying, well, you dreamt about this, therefore it means this, and coming with some sort of arbitrary or some, wrote specific things that says this means this means this, and you can get some really wonky things. And so while I would say encouraging conversation about dreams is a good thing in terms of having people talking about their dreams, you can get into some pretty wonky territory at some points, especially, if people, I've seen this on Reddit too. I've seen some people say some really, really crazy stuff in the past in terms of like just in a very arbitrary way too. I mean, people will say some pretty arbitrary stuff. I would say there's a difference between like discussing them and people just trying to ad hoc interpret other people's dreams. I'd say like there should be a special spot if you're going to do that where that's done. That's like not mixed in with everything else, because that should be something that's consensual that people do. And really, it's ultimately a personal, subjective thing if you want to do that or not. And then that's A. And then B is sort of what your dreams mean is a very personal thing, not really like something someone else should just be telling you up front. So that's where I think you can get into a little bit of sketchy territory. But on the subject of discussing dreams, I think that is a good thing. Having a place for people, and I think Dream Cafe has had a dream chat in the past. I haven't been on there in a while, but I think there's been a dream chat in the past where people have been able to talk. I know there are places where that's a thing, where there's just a dream chat. People can just talk about the dreams that they've had and talk to each other about it. And so I know that is a thing in different places, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
Cool points. Cryo, go
on. Talking about the just quickly about the idea of the dream chat that we see in Dream Cafe, and that it's generally very inactive, and that's because it goes along with the whole idea of the mindset that people have that's so like revolves around lucidity and not lucidity plus dreaming. Is people don't really care that much about other people's dreams because it's not like relevant to them. It's not as it's not interpretable to them because it's not their dreams, it's someone else's dreams. Unless it's a dream in which someone was like did a bunch of crazy stuff. But for the most part, the more exciting parts of non-lucids aren't like crazy stuff happening. It's like more in like implications and whatnot. And another thing I wanted to say was, actually, I forgot what I was going to say. You can come back to me if I remember that.
All right, perfect. I think that another important point is that people sort of feel like their dreams are a bit private, which might be something which some people disagree with, or I think it is very subjective as well, obviously, in the actual case of what one thinks about their own dreams, but also as an opinion for why people don't discuss dreams. I personally do think that there is a lot of cases of, because dreams are so insightful into oneself, and because of the fact that, in modern day, one might want to reflect on their own inner feelings and psyche and this and that, or one might not want to do so, or not want to do so with strangers on the internet. That definitely could feed in as well. Night Owl, Dawn.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Crystal. That's pretty much exactly what I was going to say, right? Who here is comfortable with sharing their personal email address or their social security number or their home address or their top 8 best friends and their personal names, right? So it's like, I know that's an exaggeration, but dreams can really be the most intimate aspects of our conscious or subconscious mind, and they can often feel embarrassing or nonsensical, right? If you're not necessarily into dream analysis or interpretation, then it could be confusing, like what these things mean or why am I dreaming of that person, for example. And I think that Cryo brings up a great point. Like, why should I care about a dream you had about your mom doing this thing that has nothing to do with me, right? It could be very disconcerting trying to make connections and really not be able to tell somebody what their dream means. That's why my favorite interpretation is, if it were my dream, I would examine this symbol closer, or I would, I would think that, a snake would mean this thing, but it could mean something completely different for you. And just right off the bat, acknowledging that subjectivity. Some of the greatest insights I've found from my own dreams have been through talking with another person, because sometimes there's this, critical factor that we have to bypass of, immediately jumping to conclusions or dismissing things. But when we talk to another person, it's sort of like explaining an in-depth concept, and you come to the realization on your own or with help. Like in my instance, I actually talked to somebody who classifies himself as a dream therapist, because it is such an intimate conversation to have. Sometimes one-on-one is better than like a public chat forum, for example, where you're going to get bombarded by opinions of strangers. But it really did help lead me to conclusions that I felt resonated with me, and I think that's where the true work happens. It can be embarrassing, right? Um, but I think one thing we can all share, without getting into the details, is the process through which we go through these steps to decipher meaning for ourselves.
Cool, good point. Cryo, we can go back to you now.
It goes along with what Night Owl was saying, that a lot of dreams can have personal details, which also makes it difficult. And it was something I wanted to say earlier when Skyfall was talking about how people can be a little too like antsy to interpret stuff, a little too like quick to do that. When a lot of the time people don't want that, and like they come to conclusions that aren't like all too rational and like very extreme sometimes. And I think that boils down more to like a general like shared idea around that. I guess a mindset, you could say, but I feel like there's a better word for it. So I feel like that could be changed with the mindset of like, if people understand that it's not necessarily the best like idea to just go crazy interpreting stuff when people like, it's not like a good idea, then yeah. And the thing I wanted to say with how like personal dreams can be is yeah, like I agree with that a lot. A lot of the times dreams don't care about what you should or shouldn't share online. They just care about what you think about and what happens in your waking life. So like the context and entire plot of dreams can oftentimes revolve around stuff that's very personal, and at a certain point it just becomes a game of like what you pick and choose to share, but it starts to kind of ruin a lot of the more intricate things that like, it starts like, if you admit all that stuff, the glue that holds the dream together is suddenly gone, so it starts to make less and less sense and have less and less meaning. So yeah.
Great, Skyfall.
Alrighty, so hilarity in the chat aside, but yes, dreams are very personal things. They're highly subjective in nature too, because each person's experience is their own. It's your, as the birds would say, dreams are perception unconstrained by sensory input. It's your own mental perceptions, your own mind that is not tied to waking reality, and it is a very highly personal, highly intimate experience at times. I can definitely see, there are probably a lot of dreams I wouldn't want to necessarily share. There are things that I'll write down and that I'll log. I log my dreams a lot, and I do plan on my personal dream journal at some point being shared. That's why I keep it. Actually, I keep it for record keeping. But there are also things I can say that people wouldn't just want to share. They're deeply personal dreams and things that people just would not want to discuss or talk about to each other. And I feel like there does need to be a degree of respect and appreciation for that. And I will say, here's another thing, okay? Keep in mind the audience of Dream Cafe, the age groups of people who come on there. Usually maturity, if we're being honest, isn't the top quality. It's just younger people in general. And I will say that talking about and sharing dreams can sometimes be a very mature subject. And so it may not be something that everyone is ready for at that specific age in terms of like discussing a lot of that with other people. But I agree with Night Owl that a lot of that stuff, they can get pretty intimate, and a lot of it is done in sort of those one-on-one kind of therapist client relationships, things of that nature that are more private, more personal. There are people who are more than happy to share dreams publicly, and there are threads and places for that. But people don't want to share all their dreams typically. There's a deeply personal nature to it. And I think there's a balance there between like, what's deeply personal. And then also, you can keep in mind with the age group and maturity of people and just like certain types of topics, you can see how things might get out of hand. I mean, here's a hypothetical. Imagine someone shares a dream and they're being pretty open and vulnerable. And then you have a bunch of younger people who aren't very sensitive or that don't really care to start mocking people and doing stuff that young kids do. Because let's be honest, I would say most people here have been in high school, knows what a lot of teenagers are like. And let's just say we don't all make the best decisions at that age. Let's just be honest. We don't all make the best decisions at that age. And getting into a very deeply personal, intimate type of subject like that can be, I could see how someone could have some really, really bad experiences because of just how people treat them when they share things that are deeply personal like that. And so I think there's a fine balance to be found. I think there's a lot of room for conversation and discussion, but at the same level, I can see how it can easily get out of hand depending on how people react and respond in situations like that because of just the demographics that come on the Dream Cafe and what people at that age are typically like.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that while I don't really see exactly Dream Cafe as being like the only example, in fact, I would give another example of the fact that spaces where people do share dreams, often from a spiritual point of view, which is obviously optional, you do get that in, at least I think in this country, there are groups of in-person dream sharing and stuff like that, which is just cool to know that it exists and that it's possible. I think that, Vis, what you were saying, you mentioned that it is possible that it could be an inherent problem with the community because there's no exact solution to this problem of dreams being too personal to share or other possible problems, but as well, lucid dreams and techniques not being a self-sustaining topic. I think that is a possible conclusion to take from it. Does anyone else have any specific conclusions? Try or John.
Just quickly adding on to what you said, yeah, I don't really think there's an exact solution. There could be one out there, but we obviously haven't figured it out yet. So I think just in general, it's going to be something that we have to like live with and work around rather than solve. So at that point, it becomes a discussion about, how we live with it and work around it.
Yeah, that made sense to me. Okay, so now I think we've concluded with the fifth topic, and we are like almost 20 minutes over time. I don't know what I expected with this topic being so deep and interesting, but there we go. If we got around to more discussion, that can only be a positive, although we are a bit late for questions. I think now we can conclude for the whole discussion, all of the 5 topics that we went over. I think the question of how we apply this to content creation, guiding, presenting things to people, and conclusions on the topic itself of mindset and lucidity, etc., all welcome. I think on a personal level, there should be a lot less emphasis on lucidity than we have right now, and an understanding which is transmitted to whoever is learning and by whoever is teaching of the vastness of dream work, that it is not just lucid dreaming, it is so much more than that. That is my conclusion, which I've taken from the topic. I don't know about others who would like to jump forward. Okay, curious, go on.
So when it comes to teaching really anybody about lucid dreaming, I would say, dream work in general, it's a highly subjective experience. It varies significantly from person to person, with each individual's perception, control, recall of those dreams in general. Because if we were to take all of that together, it's just kind of like a classroom and all those different kinds of learning styles. And in this case, dreaming, as we know it, is such a subjective experience based on the experiences that somebody has had in their life and the way that they interact with them. So some individuals may have very vivid ones. Some may not have. Some may not remember dreams on a regular basis at all. Some may have aphantasia. There's so many different people out there, and I think in this case, if we were to look at the significance of how we were to teach people, we need to make sure that we take all of these different experiences and points into account.
Cool. I'm just going to go around and pull on people so that everyone gets a chance to conclude if they want to. Skyfall, go on.
I think that there's my understanding, my takeaways is that there's a broad topic to dreams and dream work. Obviously, there's a lot of different things that can be involved in it, and I still think that ultimately what you teach people is whatever you're strongest at teaching and whatever they come to you to learn typically. So if someone comes to you to learn lucid dreaming, you arm them with the best tools that you can, helping to understand what someone's motivation is. Do they have a good motivation? Do they understand what they're getting into? Do they understand these skill aspects of lucidity and of dream work in general? Are they coming from a good place, or are they coming from like a misinformation based source where they think they know a bunch of things that are just wrong because that's what they've seen and that's what people have told them? And do they have to basically be retrained in that sense, which is a lot of people? And also having a goal of getting lucid, if approached in a healthy way and a responsible way, is not a bad thing as long as you look at it and approach it in a good way. If you actually use it to improve yourself, you don't discount or ignore your non-lucid dreams, and you know find waking life benefits and use it as a motivation to improve your own life. There's a lot of really good ways to approach that. Try to avoid the stress of getting results or hyperfixating on just getting results, and definitely the self-judgment or the stress that comes from basically trying to learn a new skill. And know that not everything is it's not an exact science in the sense there is science behind it, but it's not an exact science, and it's a very personal experience ultimately with how lucid dreaming goes.
Perfect. Night Owl, do you have anything to conclude?
Yeah, in the context of mindset, I would say you have to start with your intention. What is your intention? Why do you want to accomplish whatever your goal with the dream work practice is? And your intention should be fueled by inspiration, right? So it sort of starts with motivation. And There's intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, right? There's so many people who can tell you all the amazing reasons why you should do something, but really it has to come from within. And that core drive can come from all the information that we provide, but it more importantly originates with you and exploring experiences for yourself. Dreams are so subjective, so personal that unless you start with why you personally are interested in the subject, you'll never be able to withstand all of the different processes we've talked about that can lead you to a path of discovering lucidity or otherwise.
All right, perfect. Reese, do you have something to conclude?
I do not have anything to say that hasn't already been said.
All right, perfect. I think the same thing goes for Cryo. Now we can jump into questions, which is quite delayed, so I do apologize for that. But I think that we have gone over some really important topics, and I'm very glad for the discussion which we've had so far. So I don't know if we can make the questions go up on screen or...
We can indeed. I don't know if we can identify what channels they come from. We've had a lot that got asked, but yeah, you can hit the show comment button. Nida and I can do that, and we can make these come up.
Yeah, I'll work on it now in order. Yep, perfect. Somebody else is doing it as well.
Oh, right, I see. Okay, so
Thanks,
the
Grace.
first question, I'll just read it aloud. My dreams from Top Movie Moments. My dreams either feel like a different universe or something like a past memory. Got any idea why? Does anyone want to start, or should I jump in?
Oh, yeah. First off, what all are you doing to help you remember your dreams? What is your dream? It sounds like your dream recall maybe is not that vivid, or I think this might be a dream recall thing. In terms of like how well are you remembering your dreams? What kind of details are you remembering? If it's a vividness question, that has a lot to do with how well you're actually remembering details. And we're talking qualitatively, like how much detail can you record from your dreams? What all do you do to help you with your dream recall and to remember your dreams? Are you following? We have some dream recall resources linked on this channel, actually, on the different channels that you're watching, whether it's the LDI or the Scaffold My Dreamer or some of the others. We have resources on all the different channels that you could look at for dream recall. But are you doing things like setting intentions before bed, your dream delving when you wake up, tagging dreams if you wake up during the night, journaling them, reviewing your dream journal before you go to bed? What all are you doing to help you remember your dreams? That would be like the first question I would ask you to see, because if you can improve your dream recall, you should be able to improve alongside it your vividness and overall clarity in your dreams. And then the other thing you can do is if you are able to get lucid at any point, you could use dream control, which is a separate skill, but you can use dream control to improve vividness in a dream in the moment if you are aware that you're in a dream and you can, and you're recognizing that something isn't that vivid.
I'll say that just to jump in here, I can't look at both chats at the same time without losing my place. I don't know if I can do that actually. Anyway, I think that alternatively, I think dream recall is definitely the top bit here. But in terms of dream control and changing the way that your non-lucids are, you can do that by getting lucid. You can also do that through non-lucid incubation, through incubation techniques. And you can also try to find out why your dreams and interpret why your dreams feel this way, if it is something unrelated to recall, although I think that it is probably recall related. Further down in the chat, the same person said, better explanation for my question. Sometimes I barely feel like the dream has happened, more like a memory that happened a year ago. Not a lot of details and barely remember being there. I think that's definitely going to be a recall issue. At the end of the day, that's probably my take on that. And I agree with everything which Skyfall suggested. I think that waking state, a higher level of awareness of waking state can also increase or influence that as well. But I would just focus on recall first. I think that's the most basic one can do.
Thank you very much. I believe it was Top Movie Night for your question. And if you have any more questions, you can always leave comments on any of the videos. If we don't get to your, that goes for anyone who's still watching. If we don't get to your question today, please leave us comments. We will do our best to respond to all the comments that we get, and we'll try to answer your questions there. I know I can speak for myself. If you leave a comment on the Skyfall Blind Dreamer page, if you're watching there, I will respond to those and I will answer questions that you have there.
I see one other question, which is from, I don't know how to pronounce your name because I see you all the time on Discord. Sherazar or Shiazar? I don't know. Well, the question reads, will SSILD help with increasing awareness in a lucid dream? Does anyone else want to start with this one? Or alternatively, I can start with this one because I actually do really like this technique. I think that awareness inside of the dream isn't really affected by what you do to get lucid in the dream, which technique you use, or if you use a technique. I think that can be influenced from within. However, because SSILD is an awareness practice, it can increase your level of awareness in waking state to such an extent, because you can really amplify it like quite high. And then if that still carries on to such an extent in the dream, which I actually find that it doesn't directly carry on like that, like at 100%, it just sort of makes it higher throughout the dream, and then it will peak at some point, and that results in lucidity. That's my personal experience. I don't know about other people. So I don't think it makes such a direct change. However, awareness practices in general, yes, will increase awareness in general. And, it's important to remember that the essence of lucidity is awareness. So, you already will have increased awareness for lucidity. I understand you would be talking about additional, but I don't know. Anyone else have anything to say?
Yes, I think it definitely will increase awareness, but I think it depends on what awareness we're talking about, because in my mind, there's a lot of different types of awareness. There's like physical awareness, non-physical awareness, like meta awareness, and probably more that are like subtopics of those. SSILD will definitely help with like physical awareness. Like you're aware more of your senses because you've just like paid more attention to them, and by extension, I think that could help more with like broader physical awareness, like awareness of anything that comes in through our senses is physical, like sight, hearing, sound. Like that's all what we use to perceive the world, but it extends a bit to like your awareness of the physicality of like other stuff, like a tiny bit. But I would say like non-physical awareness of like situations and like context. I don't do SSILD that much, or not at all right now, but it seems like, and from what I've seen, it wouldn't help as much with like understanding and awareness of like the context and like plot and stuff. Wouldn't like help it any more than anything else would. That isn't like directly helping with that.
I'm actually going to disagree with Crystal's first point, because actually the whole point of being lucid is being aware that you're dreaming while you're dreaming. So by definition, techniques that are designed to help you recognize that you are dreaming in the dream are definitionally designed to make you more aware in the dream, because you are being aware of the fact that you're dreaming. Obviously, waking life awareness practices and mindfulness in particular is what we're talking about here in terms of awareness of context and critical thinking and awareness that way, the meta awareness. You're talking more about sort of a mindfulness practice, being awake, being aware of what you're experiencing, being able to examine it and think about your thinking, your experiences. We just had a really big discussion about that not too long ago. I know I did. But mindfulness, it would be a big part of that while awake. But any lucid dreaming practice is designed ultimately either through awareness directly or critical thinking, or through perspective memory training like mild, is designed to make you more aware while you're dreaming in one way or another, either through remembering to notice something and then snap you into that awareness, or to be aware as you fall asleep and raise your awareness, or to be aware as you transition into a dream and just be aware and lucid that way. Methods for lucid dreaming are designed by definition to make you more aware while you're dreaming. So I actually do disagree with that first point. But I think in terms of being lucid and aware, I think there are some things you can do while lucid to boost your awareness. I definitely think being more aware and alert in waking life can definitely help with your awareness in dreams as well, more generally. So mindfulness definitely helps with that.
To just clarify what I meant by that, I think that what Cryo said was super important because I didn't make it clear enough what types of awareness I was talking about. Yes, techniques do originate in the idea of like awareness of state because that's the goal. Why I was saying that SSILD sort of specifically has a lot of focus on awareness, what I meant was awareness of senses, which sort of is like a self-awareness mostly. And that type of awareness can translate into a lot of different types of awareness. And when it's put so much emphasis on it and heightened to such an extent, I think it can definitely heighten a lot of different types of awareness in the dream. That's kind of what I was thinking of, because it is true, I think, as well, you know, I think we all know that it's important to separate the different types of awareness, and one can be very aware of the fact that they're dreaming without being very aware of themselves or something like that. Does anyone else have something to add or stifle again? Regardless, at the same time, I will shout out the one and only MP Real for being in the chat and re-listening later, I'm sure, to what I'm saying right now. Yay. I don't know how to pronounce your name, this latest comment from Rixirogi, thanking us for our time, and I thank you for your time to listen to us as well. The time you take to listen to us as well. Does anyone else have anything to add regarding the question or the topic, or else I will go concluding the session?
I move to adjourn. I don't have anything else to add at this point. And yes, I would like to thank everyone who stuck through to the end. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for watching. We really appreciate it.
All right, yeah, perfect. So thank you, everyone. I will reiterate what Stifle says. The session got pretty long, like the time of discussion and less time for questions, although there weren't too many questions. So I'm very glad that we got to talk about everything which we got to talk about and all of the perspectives which everyone on this amazing panel have provided. And I hope that we can definitely take all of this topic to our own practices and guiding and mindsets, because it is so important to take into account. So that being said, thank you for listening. Thank you all for participating, to everyone here. I cannot guarantee when exactly the next deep dive will be, because it used to be the first Saturday and then it got messed up. But I look forward to seeing you all next time.